Good morning. Welcome everybody to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Dan and Karen, Lori and Angel and Catherine. And today we're going to continue our discussion of the book, Love Life God. Sorry, my bookmark fell out. Love Life God by Jarrad Hewett. And we are going to be talking about chapter 8. And in chapter 8, it is, let me see what the kind of description it says. Chapter 8 talks about the fear of creation and why fear makes it difficult to manifest the things we want in our lives. But before we get going with that, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves. And I want to give you an opportunity to know where to find us if you're watching this as a recording. So if you're on YouTube and you're watching this as a recording, you can find us over in Facebook, and you can go to mindsetmasterycollective.com. That will take you to our website where you'll find a link to our Facebook group. And if you want to participate with us, all you have to do is just click on the link over there in Facebook. I generally will post a little snippet of what we're doing in the Zoom link, which never changes. So once you get in here, you can bookmark it and use the same link every time. So with that, guys, go ahead and jump out, introduce yourselves, and we'll start talking about chapter 8.
Hi, I'm Angel Studebaker. Oh, sorry, Karen. I just saw that you unmuted. I'm Angel Studebaker down here in Beaufort, South Carolina.
And I'm Karen Lohoff in Mesa, Arizona.
And Lori Emmons in Denver, technically challenged, so I'm in the cosmos.
Catherine Clement here.
Dan Sissick in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm not seeing our live stuff on Facebook right now, so I'm looking for it.
Yeah, I'm showing it over here. So I know we are live. You might have to refresh the group page that you're on or something to see it pop up. I'm not sure. I just posted a comment on there. All right, so those of you who are watching, if you're watching us live on Facebook and you have a thought come up while we're talking, then leave us a comment below the video, and then we can add your thoughts to our conversation. And of course, if you want to join us, you can scroll up or down in the Facebook group there and find the Zoom link. Actually, the pinned announcement that is in our group, the top post, has a link to get into here. It tells you at the top there, this is how you join the Saturday Mastermind, and so you could get in there at any point. So if you want to talk about it, jump on in here. Okay, so chapter 8 of Love Life God by Jarrad Hewett. I'm just going to read a little bit from here because this chapter is kind of, well, if you've been following along, of course, this book talks a lot about manifesting and how to manifest stuff into your life, but it also tells us why we have trouble with that. And for this particular chapter, it's talking about fear and our fear of our own creation and why that can cause a discrepancy in what we think that we want versus what we actually get. So let me just read some of this and then we'll just talk about it a little bit. Okay, so fear of creation. The first frequency we wish to address is the fear of creation. We want to start here because this is the first in a sequence of frequencies or thought patterns that, when balanced, allow you to manifest what you've called forth from source. Obviously, your entire creation is made up of many frequencies, but we want to specifically address those that specifically pertain to manifestation. Okay, so fear of creation. As we explain the frequencies, you'll see their multidimensionality and their function within the different levels of manifestation. For example, if you want to create anything on this physical plane, this fear frequency must be balanced with regard to what you want to create. However, it must also be balanced on the larger scale of fearing yourself as the creator that you are. If you fear yourself as creation, then according to that degree of fear, you'll do one of two things. You will not create what you set out to bring forth, or you will create it in a way that is not harmonious with your desire. Within these two scenarios are the explanation to the often asked questions of why. Why did this thing happen to me? Why does my world look like this? Or why does this keep happening to me? It also answers to why there is war. It answers to all those questions and many more. Okay, so what do you guys think about this this first part where it's talking about fear causing us to, if we fear ourselves as creator, then we says you won't create what you've set out to bring forth, or you might create it in a way that's not harmonious with your desires. What do you think about that?
I think that happens a lot, and I think that many people don't either know about that component or they don't understand that can be a part of things. And I'm sure that we're going to learn a lot about how to overcome that. I think I can give you maybe, I hope you'll see this as a humorous example. It's really not that humorous, but I'd prefer that you see it that way. Really disgusting. This great place that I've moved into has the capacity for 174 people. It's got 13 floors. Since they don't count a floor for 13, it's supposedly a 14 floor place. And someone brought in bed bugs. And if you know any of the things about bed bugs other than the little song, that your mother might have sung to you at night, they have a great capacity for, living on, moving back around, all that kind of thing. And I had a problem with, I don't know if I'm going to be able to think of the name of it. Some nasty little insect that can be in your lawn grass, if you haven't mowed your grass for a long time, and if you have little puppies, which was the case, and they just bite your ankles, and they're just, it's just so painful. So I certainly didn't want to have to deal with bed bugs, but I've noticed that I have itchy spots, red spots, and I'm wondering if I have bed bugs. Well, I hope not, but if I do, I'll be cast out of my room for 10 days. And with the COVID situation and all that, moving into a new place, everything, I've just done so much quarantining. I'm, really dreading mentioning that I have bed bugs and having to quarantine for another 10 days. So I've been thinking about this creator part, being a creator and moving the bed bugs. There's empty rooms that they could move to. So in my mind, I've been telling them to go to these other places and to leave, and I see them bumping into walls and getting mad and coming back and biting. And, I realize there's all kinds of things you can imagine that, can create fear. So if anyone wants to use this example, as we learn about handling our fear, using our fear better, turning it around, whatever, I would appreciate your help. So that's this for the moment.
I clicked on it and I could have sworn I made it unmuted. Okay, never mind, whatever. But what I was saying is, I wonder if, around you, the people that live in the same place with you, have had an issue with the bed bugs and have kind of in their mind sent the bugs away, and so you got everybody else around there doing the same thing you're doing, and so the bed bugs have more people out there than you. Tell them to go to somewhere else. That's why they're all congregating there with you, because it's only one of you compared to everybody else in the building. But I'll jump into my next thought then. But I think you're right, Karen. I think we all do have something inside us that when we in our minds first like say, oh, I would like to do that, I would like to try that, or I'd like to be that type of person. But then that overwhelming fear comes in, or whatever kind of stops us or whatever, and that fear of actually trying to go out and go after that, all the things that come in, the negative things that come in, which are brought in by us ourselves, as well as external people. Say, like, you tell a good friend and you say, oh, I would really like to do this, and they say, oh, well, do you really think you can do that, or do you really think you have the ability, or why would you do that? It costs so much money, or this, that, and I think that helps build up that fear creation rather than just pushing ahead. I think that's, and I'm finally realizing why one friend, I think a lot of us on here know Kareem. He would join on the mastermind a few times. He loves Elon Musk. He thinks he's one of the great people, the guy with Tesla and all that. And I think he admires him for his mindset, because it doesn't seem like anything really affects him. He just plugs on with whatever his visions are, whatever he sees, whatever he thinks, and somehow he seems to make things manifest. Like, his Teslas, he's got Teslas out there, and, people buy them. And I see tons of them on the road, whereas, 5 years ago, hardly saw anything like that, and stuff and things like that. So, and he's doing other things, and it's his mindset seems to be so like, I can create it, I can do it, and nobody's going to stop me. And I think sometimes we need to teach ourselves to be that same mode, that same method, that same ideology of, I'm not going to let anything get in our way or my way. But yet we do. We let everything else from outside get in our head and slow us down, or stop us in some cases.
Well, I hope Elon creates a way to clean up all his shit out of space before it runs into us while he's busy creating. Yeah, this subject, I think that most people do not want to take responsibility for what's happening in their lives. So this is sort of a deep subject for a lot of people to swallow. And I mean, life happens. I know that we create, obviously. I mean, we show ourselves that in many ways as different things show up in our lives. And we can look back and look at our thoughts and analyze them and figure it out. Oh yeah, I was thinking this. Now, it doesn't always show up exactly like what you were thinking. Like, there's some kind of secret code, maybe, I don't know, that I miss out on sometimes. I think the universe is very literal sometimes, and delivers things in a way that we didn't necessarily expect. I'll put it that way. But we're still getting what we asked for. So we are creating it but it doesn't always show up exactly like we expect. So we don't recognize that we created it. I don't know what that just said, but anyway. So I think it's good to really pay attention, as you're going through your day, having your thoughts and because thoughts are prayers. I mean, they're not as quite direct, but words and thoughts are a way of manifesting. So we have to pay attention to what we're thinking and how we're feeling. And if we're consistently feeling a certain way, that's going to manifest something. And it could be the opposite of what we would be hoping for. I think that's what he's trying to bring out here. Where when he talks about war being the manifestation of the fear of creation. I mean, people will do anything, kill anybody over God, if they believe in a God, if they truly believe like in this God, they will defend that God and do anything for that God. Like all the rules seem to go out the window. If it's for God, you can just do what you want. But the problem is everybody's got a different God. So, and if they would realize that they're part of that, as opposed to serving something else. I don't know if I'm making any sense. It'll make more sense as we get through the chapter.
Yeah, I think that maybe just reading things as we go along, I think that's going to make a big difference as far as our thought processes and whatnot. And but I want to make a comment on what you were talking about, Karen, about the bed bugs and how it's interesting how we our fears come up and then we instantly kind of manifest something. And I've noticed this a lot when people are talking about fleas or they're talking about bed bugs, or I start talking about mosquitoes and then I'll be in the house and it'll seem like mosquitoes are getting me. It's crazier. But it's funny, anytime I hear somebody talking about those kind of never mind, those kind of bugs, is that I instantly will start itching. I'll be like, something just got me, and I won't have gone anywhere or done anything, and yet at the same time I'm manifesting bug bites. It's crazy. But yeah, it's I feel for you, Karen, and I hope that they're not in your apartment. That really would suck if you had to move out of there and deal with that. But I mean, and hopefully whoever helps treat that problem knows what they're doing also. But it was just kind of interesting, the fear aspect. We fear this thing and then all of a sudden we're creating it in our own lives in some way. So yeah, fascinating. Did you want to add a thought, Angel, before I read some more of this next section?
Oh yeah, just kind of pertaining to the whole thing about the bugs and whatnot. So I got those gnats, or those fungus gnats, in all my little plants, like all my seedlings and whatnot. I'm like, what's going on? Like when I first started them, they were doing great, they were fine, and then I got concerned about them not being watered enough, so I kept watering them or spritzed them, and I'm like, all right, everything's good, and they started growing like mold and whatnot, and then the fungus gnats came. I'm like, oh no. So I had to get rid of everything and start all over. So I started all over and everything was doing fine. And then I brought in 2 pots, and then it's suddenly an infestation. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, look at the house. I'm like looking online for all these treatments and whatnot. And then I just potted 2. And I thought I did some good treatments on him, and I'm starting to see him, and I left him outside. I left him away from the rest of everybody else. And I'm like, maybe if I leave him here, they won't get infested because they need to get planted because they're sprouting and they're putting out leaves now. They need to get in a pot. And then even out there, they got a couple. I'm like, no! So it's like, I just want to grow some baby plants. That's all. But I'm like so concerned for him too at the same time. So I think that's not helping either. So it's like, why won't you just grow? But all my veterans, all the ones that I've had over here, they're fine. They're doing great. Nothing wrong with them. No flies or gnats in them. They're all doing great. Just all my babies. Like,
I was going to say, I think to your point, Samantha, and maybe Catherine a little bit, it seems easier for us to manifest the fear side of things than it is the positive side too. It seems that the fear side is so much more easily manifested, or it just overtakes us and controls more easily, or we're so willing to give into it rather than stop and say, no, this is, for me, sometimes I think I have to stop and say, no, I'm not going to accept this, or I'm not going to allow this, or no, this is being a little too irrational and letting it overtake me. Stop and just accept what it is and move forward and go and think, more on the positive side and stuff. And sometimes it works, and sometimes I still slip into the the fear side too. So it seems to me that the fear side of creation is much easier, for lack of a better way.
It does seem like that, doesn't it? I mean, but if we think about it, I mean, we are master creators when it comes to fear. I mean, I really think that we are. And I think it's because we have been taught fear since the beginning of our lives. I mean, that is, we fear hurting ourselves because our parents say, don't do that, you're going to hurt yourself. We fear our parents because they're saying, don't do that, or I'm going to whoop your ass, or whatever, or just, I mean, and as we grow up, it's all about fear. It's like this whole human existence has been about fear. It's like when I was growing up and going to school, I went to a Christian school, and everything was about fear. You don't do this because if you do it, you're going to go to hell. That was the main theme of my entire young life, was don't do it because, and it was a fear. You should fear God. You should fear what will happen to you if you don't do what you're supposed to do. And and so we have been taught all of this fear our whole lives. And this may be not the exact theme that everybody goes through, but I think that many of us can recognize how we've been taught to be fearful more than we've been taught to be loving, if you will. I mean, it seems crazy. What if in school we were taught to be loving, and that's why, because when you are loving, you create more wonderfulness, and you create more friends, and everything is better and happier, versus if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell. I mean, imagine what we would be like if we had been taught more about love versus more about fear. And I had another thought on that, particularly when Angel was talking about the plants. And this is a good example of, she wants to grow these plants, they're little baby plants, and she's fearful that she's going to do something wrong to kill her little plants. And so what happens is that then not only are we being fearful, but then we're taking actions based on that fear. And when we take actions based on the fear, it creates the thing we ultimately don't want. It's like, and I totally get it. I had a plant last year that I'm like, oh, it's the most beautiful plant I've ever seen. I've never had one like this before. It's so beautiful. And so I was like hoping, I'm like, I have all this desire for this to be like a big plant in my collection of plants and all awesome. And I was worried I was going to do something wrong. And what did I do? I gave it too much attention. I messed with it too much. I did all these things because I was fearful that I was going to do, that I was going to do something wrong. And so I overdid all these things I shouldn't have done and ended up killing it, of course, so it's fascinating how we tend to do that. And when we can recognize that our fears actually influence our behaviors, then we can also recognize that our love and our self-love and being love, like it's talking about in this book, can also influence our behaviors. And when we can focus on that, then maybe we can actually create the things that we want versus the things that we fear. So I'm sure you guys have something else to talk about on there before I go forward in the book.
No, I think if you go forward in the book, it will kind of play into some of what you were just saying. So I think we should move on.
Okay, cool. I'll read the next section here. Okay, so it says, all right, so it's saying the answer to why there is war, or this is also the answer to why there is war. It is the answer to all those questions and many more. Okay, so that's pretty big. It's huge. With your desire to expand is fear. When activated and or focused upon, this fear will be an undercurrent in all of your creation efforts. So that's, basically what I was just saying is when we're fear and we're focusing on fear, we take actions because of this fear. And so it influences us. Taking the example
What page are you on?
I am on page 124, near the bottom. Okay, so then it says, taking the example of war, we would say that there are a multitude of fears at play. Ultimately, it boils down to the fear of creation, and we will show you what that looks like. Let's examine this idea with regards to war between religions, and this is what Catherine was talking about with fear and religion and all that. Okay, so in a situation like that, or like this, there is a belief in a creator other than the self. This creator often has specific things he or she has commanded for his or her followers to do. There's a clear-cut set of beliefs, ideals, social constructs, and values set forth. This causes war not only between religion, but it also causes war within the self. If someone believes wholeheartedly in a creator being outside of the self, they will also believe in an afterlife ruled over by this creator, or even that this current existence is ruled by that creator. Then any thought or action that comes about in opposition to the aforementioned beliefs and ideals creates a serious problem. The self is literally threatened anytime a desire forms that is outside of the set parameters of the creator being. This life is threatened as well as the next. In this scenario, there is only one way to God, and that is to do what God says. Therefore, anyone who doesn't share your beliefs not only opposes you, but they oppose God. And how dare they? Some take this to an extreme and believe that because another does not believe in their God, that they're an enemy of that God, they're an enemy of that God and any enemy of God's follower. Oh, and sorry, let me start that one again. Sometimes I get my tongue tied there. Okay, they are an enemy of God, and that an enemy of God to, and an enemy of all God's followers. The bottom line is, if you're right and you have a mandate from your God, that which you believe to be the source of all creation, you will have created the ultimate excuse for your actions, be they war, oppression, violence, etc., because these aren't really your actions, they're commandments from God. What do you guys think about that section? That kind of, I think, Catherine, that's kind of what you were alluding to with your discussion on an ultimate kind of excuse for war and whatnot when we think of God as outside of ourselves. So there's another thing it kind of pointed out on here is also this conflict within ourselves because of our belief in God. And I've struggled with that a lot of years, but jump out, Dan. I saw you on mute.
Well, I was going to say for me, because I think I'm more along this vein, but for me, I don't believe that he's yes, I believe that God is outside of me, but I also believe that he resides in me, and that I do have a connection with him, and a sense of my connection with him. I still may not have found the true full frequency for that. Sorry. Um, the full connection or something like that. And while, yes, I believe that, I have my beliefs in that, there are people with beliefs that are contrary to mine. I don't necessarily hate them, and I don't necessarily, but I do have my beliefs and thoughts about what's going to happen. And I do believe in that I will transcend into something better and more after I die on this plane. But I don't believe that, how do I say this? I believe that we all have the right and the choice to choose and move within what's best for us. I just don't fully always agree with what those things are. That's probably the best way for me to say it, because I'm not out here looking to say that they're wrong or that I'm right, or anything like that. I'm saying within myself, that's where I'm at. But so that's why going through some of these books and some of the things it's for me helped me strengthen my own faith, but it's also made me look at it in some ways that I may not have looked at it before.
I think this is it brings up an interesting thing, and for me, when I talk about the inner conflict aspect of it, I can think back in a lot of my life where I felt like I was just questioning everything and conflicted because I would have uh, interest in something, and yet my religion was condemning it, and it created this conflict. And for instance, when we're talking about um, me, it was kind of like delving into this idea of natural living and herbal remedies and crystals and stuff that back in the olden days would be considered witches, like evil witches. Nowadays, we look at people that are Wiccan, or even just general spiritualists who believe in more energies that are available to us um, than what we thought back then. But all of those different things where, when I felt like I had psychic abilities and I could see things or know things that were going to happen, all of that was stuff that was condemned on by my religious upbringing, is that they would say that that was all evil. And so that created a huge conflict within myself, because I'm like, I'm not experiencing these things as evil. I'm experiencing them as spiritual and a connection to nature, and just a connection to the otherworldly. But yet at the same time, if I would talk about those things to my teachers, then they would immediately be telling me, you need to stop that. That's evil. You shouldn't even be looking at it, et cetera, et cetera. It's not, don't question God. Don't question anything. Just do. This is what you're supposed to do. These are the rules. Don't question anything. And that was a huge conflict within myself for so many years. And, and then also, like, the differences between just even within Christianity, there are different, there's like the Baptists, and then there are the Protestants and Lutherans, and, and all of those. And even those ones that are, they all have these kind of set religious rituals, if you will. And they're not always in agreement with one another, and instead of talking to each other and going, what do you think, and we can all learn and grow together, like we try and do here, they want to condemn one another. It's like one of the first rules, or one of the biggest things that I learned, that was such a conflicting thing, was judge not lest you be judged. And they say that, but yet then all the people go out and judge everyone else for not believing exactly what they believe. So it's this whole big conflicting thing. If we look at even like the difference between Christianity and Mormons, there's like a huge difference in the way that things are they believe. And the same thing with Buddhists and Catholics. And I mean, they all have these different ideas, and Jews and everything in it. And it's sad to think that there's so much conflict between people because of, they have these very narrow beliefs, and they're not open to exploring other things. And because of that, they cut themselves off from other people. They even persecute them. I mean, that's been the theme of our entire history, has been conflict between religious beliefs more than anything else. Not only that, I mean, obviously there's just the conquerors that out there just want to conquer everybody, but a lot of times they use religion as the reason why. So, or the justifiable reason why, we can't deal with these infidels, so sorry, losing my voice. Somebody else talk.
This is a pretty scary thing for me to say, but really, as you were reading that, I couldn't help but think of how many things have been done in the name of Allah. And I don't begin to know anything about that religion, or, the divisions of that. But I do know a couple of women that I've worked with, and that have worked with me is more accurate, that are so educated, loving, kind, extending themselves. And, I hate to think that I could have stayed stuck in my, tiny little city. Well, it wouldn't even be a city, but my, small town background, where I had never even seen a Black person until high school sports. And same way with a Hispanic person. There was one, as far as I know, there was one Hispanic family in town because there was only one Hispanic kid. And that really, truly was the root of my, as best I can tell, the root of my finally considering that the religion that I was raised in was not the only true church on the face of the earth. How could it be when there were so many other people? I watched the movie Gandhi when it first came out, which was 100 years ago. It was over 3 hours long, and it was impossible to not consider that there were other people with other beliefs that were really good people. And one of the things that I keep thinking, it's easy for me to think as I meet new and different people in my life, there are so many good people in the world. And it is truly such a shame that we divide ourselves off, especially in the name of God, and say, you don't believe the right thing, I do. And so let's go to war. Let's persecute one another. Let's harm one another. It's interesting that he brings into this chapter, this is the explanation for war. What? It's our fear. It's our fear that if we get too close to someone else, they might change us. They might help change our minds and our thinking.
Well, I think that's a good part of it, because if we're honest with ourselves, we all want to be judged and looked at based on who we are, our character, how we live and treat others. And I think that's, and I'm going to say, I think that's a worldwide universal idea. It's just coming to terms and getting everybody to learn to look more at that rather than the differences and everything like that. Because some of my best friends Mexican. I have Black friends that I love and adore to death. And had I not been, I mean, I remember when I saw the first Black kid in my grade school. It was like, whoa. It was, but it didn't shake me from being. I wasn't the greatest friends with him because we didn't have the same interest on a lot of things, but I didn't hate him either. He was a decent kid and everything. And then I remember when I moved here, one street over, one of the smartest people I ever knew. He was, like one of the tops in my class graduating in high school, was a guy named Mike Gibson, who lived, and he was a Black kid. Played basketball really good, really great, really nice, really, and we hung around with him at times and he hung around with us, but then he had other friends. So the intermingling, and so in that, I learned to try and look at people for who they are and what they bring into my life and what I can bring into their life. It doesn't always work exactly that way. And yes, get caught up in things and stuff like that I think we all get caught up in. But I think that's something that if more of the world were to focus on really seeing people for who they are and where their heart is, I think we can find a lot more ground and more equal ground than in other ways.
I was just starting to kind of type a comment on the live stream, and I'll just say it instead, since since I was typing it anyway. I was just thinking about all the different times in our history when groups of people were treated horribly just because of I don't know if it was just because of religious differences. I'm sure there was other things that played into it, but because of their superiority complex of the Europeans or the Germans or whatever group, the Catholics, they tended to at that time tended to treat everyone else who didn't have those same beliefs as if they were savages or they're less than. For instance, we're talking about the Germans squashing the Jews and all the horrificness that happened because of that. And then the Europeans coming to God all over the creation. I mean, they came to the U.S. They came, or it wasn't the U.S. at the time. They came to the Americas, and they treated the Indians like less than. They treated them like savages. They went to the southern countries, Jamaica and South America and all of those areas, and everybody who was there, they just treated them like they were less than people. And it happened in Australia, and it happened in Africa. All the different types of people from all over the world that were there first, were treated like savages or less than because of this idea that, the God of the time was the superior God, and that everyone else should be squashed down to bow to him, you know? And I don't believe for one moment, I want to make sure that everybody realizes what I'm saying here is that I don't believe for one moment that any true God would believe any of that nonsense. That's not what it's ever been about, in my opinion. I think that it was people and humanity who were trying to justify these horrific things that they were doing, and they were using religion and their beliefs, and they were twisting them to make them seem like that's what they were supposed to do, you know. And that was that's kind of another thing that's always been a conflict in my mind, is that as far as religion is concerned, when I was growing up, one of the big things they wanted us to do is they wanted us to go out and be witnesses in the world and try and convince anyone who was not of our religion to become our religion. And I struggled with that a lot, because I'm like, who am I to tell someone else that what they believe is wrong? That's not what I believe. I mean, and it's so weird, because we'd have these conflicting things that were taught to us. Is one thing we'd be taught, you need to go out and convince everybody that what we believe is the only right way and there is no other way. But yet at the same time, we were taught these stories of Jesus loving everyone and treating everyone, regardless of color or background or whatever, to be equal. It's such a conflicting thing. Don't judge other people, but yet they would be judgmental. Here, treat everybody the same, except for then they wouldn't. I mean, it's just it's frustrating to me. But wow, we've gone through this hour fast, haven't we? It's about at the top of the hour. Do you want to move forward in the book, or you want to wrap up for today? We are getting close. We just want to add some final thoughts maybe before we wrap up for this chat.
I think that until we can find balance within ourselves and our own families and our own relationships. I mean, it's everybody, talks about world peace and wanting world peace, but can barely get through a day without, some sort of situation, just personally or interpersonally, just in our own little circle. If we can't even find peace within ourselves and within our families and our communities, then it's going to be kind of challenging to do the world peace thing. But the good news is, if we all start really being the creators that we are and creating that peace within ourselves and our families and our communities, all those communities touch at some point. And so then that's when we get the world peace. So love you guys. Have a great week.
I agree with you, Catherine, on that. I think, I mean, when you were saying that, it was making me think of some things going on within my own family that right now, as I was thinking about it, was kind of pissing me off, because there's some things going on in my family that I'm looking at what they're doing within each other, and I'm going, can you not see the damage you're doing here and the hurt that, and I'm in the middle of it, kind of, on the outside. Because if I go one way, then it's just, and I'm just like, and I'm trying to, I'm like you, Catherine. I'm right now in that middle process of trying to find, how do I get balance and peace and bring this all back to the point of where my family once was. Not that we're all hating each other, but there's just been some hurt and discord. But in that, it's kind of like grown. So now it's like, and I know on both sides there's been hurt and pain, and I know that's what's stemming it, and it's driving me nuts, and I'm still trying to figure out how can I be that balance and work it out to where I can get that balance back that my family once had at one point. And it's driving me nuts, because I don't know how to get there. And I think that's the key, working within our own selves and within myself, because I have my own battles of things I, even within me about things I, you know, but you're right, because then our circle of influence around those around us, when we can get that balance going, then they hopefully can start seeing that and get their balance going, and then it just grows. And I think, that's part of what this book is trying to teach us and get us to that point of realizing that right now everybody's on so many different sides and so many different frequencies, that how can we find that any one balance anywhere?
I think that's just kind of within yourself, because there also, in order to get like a balance with a group of people, there also has to be a want from those people as well too. And like I kind of have like similar situation to what you're kind of doing. Like my husband's family, their family dynamic is so much more different than the family dynamic that I grew up with. Like it's such a white and black kind of thing, and I wasn't expecting it when I had moved down here. It was kind of like a big slap to my face, and I'm going, oh no, this is not, I don't like this. And for the life of me, for the amount of years that I've been down here, I've been trying to get them to be this, or hope that maybe they can do this, or kind of see that maybe this is better. And I've been trying to kind of push that on them, not like, be like, you guys need to do this, but it was just like in hopes that maybe if I do this, they'll do that, and their dynamic was so much different, and it just frustrated me and infuriated me for years. And I just didn't understand it, and I just didn't get it, and like nobody wanted to do anything or work with me, and I'm like, why? So I'm like, you know what, finally I raised my hands. I'm like, I'm done getting upset about it. I'm done trying to get them to be like my family, because it's not going to happen. I just came to that realization. It's like, they're not going to be like that. That's just not who they are. And I need to accept that. And it was kind of like a hard realization for me as well too. It's just like, all right, now that I have accepted that, things have flown a little bit easier. The things that they do don't upset me as much anymore, and it's not really much of a surprise either. So it's just like, all right, it's like, instead of trying to bring my own balance to these people, I just had to let them be, because they, I guess, were already at their own balance. And I came in, it's like, I don't like it. But, now that I'm accepting it, that you can't change people from who they are or anything like that, and even if you really tried hard and they needed to change, then, there still has to be the want for them to want to change too. Or you're just beating your head up against the wall, like, they gotta open the door, but like, okay, now I want you to do it. But now that I've accepted it, it just is really, everything's a little bit smoother now.
I get what you're saying, and I understand that. It's just that me, from my side, and I know what part, because I've been informed on one side. I'd like to understand a little better on the other side of what this was over and what it was about. And it was over just some things monetarily, and I'll leave it at that. And I think it grew out of that, and I'm just like,
Kind of like a misunderstanding situation, like everybody misunderstood each other, and it just kind of escalated.
Yes and no. I think there's, but going back to the idea that money tends to cause a lot of, rifts between, and both sides understand that thought and process, and know it, and I know they understand it, and they know. And in my mind, it's like, can you guys not see? And I know, and I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of like, I'm not going to be able to do much about this. They've got to get to a point, if I'm one that is there and helps facilitate it, okay, fine. If not, but it's going to have to be something that's going to come from them. But I hate it to be something that comes about, like when somebody's really sick or, you know, could be dying or going through, and then they realize, oh, we let all this be in the middle of when family is what's more important. And so, but yes, I know I'm probably not going to be able to be the one. And that's the other part, because that's where I fight with myself. It's like, no, I want to fix it. That's the type of person I am. I want to fix this. So I feel comfortable and I feel more at peace. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe I just, you know, need to get more at peace with myself. Say, hey, in due time, or whenever it is the right time for it to happen, it will happen. And if I'm a part of it, I'm a part of it. If I'm not, I'm not. Let it go and get that balance up. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe getting that balance in me. So then maybe they see that in me. And then maybe that balancedness, or however that emanates out, they'll feel it, and maybe they'll say, oh, you know, and maybe that might be part of what this is all about too. Like I said, it's time to, you know, learning some stuff from this book and understanding that a lot of it's within me myself too. I've got to, you know, balance myself out too.
You know, and then from there, like once we create balance in ourselves, it could radiate out and kind of do like that way, the ripple effect. You know, because once we start emanating that balanced energy and stuff like that, then more people will be like, oh, they're more apt to be drawn towards you, or drawn towards that balanced energy, or the people who are seeking to balance their energy within or whatever, then they could be drawn to you, and it just kind of be like a whole gathering kind of deal. Maybe that's kind of how it is supposed to work. You know, once you find that inner balance, or once you come to accept it and you find the inner balance, then it just kind of radiates out from you, and then in turn creates balance in your life, and helps the people in your life feel that balance as well too, and then makes them want to have inner balance, and then it just kind of maybe a thought.
I kind of want to expound on that just a little bit, and I think this is one of the things that this book is really trying to communicate to us, is that we can't fix anyone else. We can't make them do anything we want them to do. And when we can, you know, kind of recognize that the only person that we have any control over is ourselves, that we can actually change everything in our life when we work on when we focus on changing our own ways that we look at things, and the ways that we interact with other people, and you know, and I'll give an example. You know, this last 10 years or so, it's been kind of a magical time in my life, if you will, because when I came to terms with the fact that I couldn't fix what I thought was broken, and here's another aspect of it. I thought it was broken. In reality, it was just the way that I was looking at it. And I'm talking about my relationship with my husband. And, you know, because for a lot of years, I was frustrated with him. I was angry at him. I was disappointed. I was dissatisfied. There was all these different things that I was upset about. And I realized it was because I was focused on everything I didn't like. And maybe I didn't even 100% realize that early on, but it was, as I look back, I can recognize those things. But I started focusing on what I knew was right. And I also took responsibility for my own influence on the situation, and my own aspect and my own everything, because of course, like, you know, we were talking about earlier on, is that when we're focused on fear, we react, you know, our behaviors are influenced by that fear. But when we focus on love, then our behaviors are influenced by love. And when I changed the way that I was looking at my relationship with my husband when I switched from one of frustration and dissatisfaction and always focused on all the things he did or didn't do that I didn't like. And I switched over to thinking about all the things that I did appreciate about him. He didn't have to do a dang thing. Everything changed because of what I was focusing on. So then my behaviors changed and my behaviors influenced his behavior, because that's what we do. We tend to influence one another because of the way that we react to each other. And so over this past 10 years or so, since I started this, just changing my way of looking at our relationship, everything has changed. It's become like this magical relationship that I never even thought was possible. And he personally never did any of these things that I'm doing within myself. I just changed the way that I was looking at them. I changed the way that what I was focused on. And because of that, my behavior changed and everything changed. And so I think that we can do the same thing within our families, and we can do the same thing within our community, and we can do the same thing in our workplace, and all of those things. We don't have to worry about what everybody else is doing. We just need to focus on ourselves and what we're focused on. And by virtue of doing that, our behaviors change and influence everyone else in our life, whether we intend for it or not. And I feel like that's the one thing that's trying to tell us is we are the creators of our own life, and everyone else creates their own lives too. It's not our responsibility to worry about what everybody else is doing, because when we focus on ourselves and we focus on our own creation and what we're trying to do, then we create our universe around ourselves. Because as much as everybody wants to say, you're not the center of the universe, you are totally the center of your own universe, and you are the creator of your own universe. And so by virtue of focusing on what you love and what you appreciate and gratitude, all of these different things, then you create a world of your own making that is more representation of those things. So that's kind of what I feel like this book is really trying to get across to us. But we are a little past the hour. So any final thoughts before we wrap up? I'm sure everybody has all kinds of stuff. I gotta mark the place where we are in the book so I can start there again next week.
That's an understatement, Samantha. We all always have something to say.
But it's like, I have a last thought. That just it just brings up the thought of what you taught me growing up, Mom, of anytime something happened or anytime that I was in a fight with somebody, you always told me that the most important person to me is me. That is the number one person that I need to be looking out for. That's the number one person that I need to be taking care of. And as younger me, I didn't quite understand it. And I took it quite literally, really, when I was thinking about it. So I'm like, so it was, being younger, it was kind of, to me, it almost was like a controversy, because I wanted to be nice and I wanted to take care of other people as well, too, because I've seen, everybody else taking care of everybody else, too, So as a younger person, I took it quite literally. So I'm just like, I get it in a sense, but I don't get it. Now that I'm older, it's not necessarily a literal term that I need to take literally. It's more of like, make sure you're good first before trying to take care of somebody else. Make sure you have enough bricks for your house before giving your bricks away and trying to build somebody else's house, And it's like, now that I'm older and we're getting more into this, it makes a lot more sense. I understand why you said it to me so much, because it comes up on a regular basis in my brain a lot of the times when I'm having a conflict or when I'm, super stressed out or something like that. I'm just trying to take care of everybody else. Those words come in my mind, take care of number one. Who's number one? Me. And it's definitely a saying that I live by. And I didn't quite understand it until I was an adult, or at least until I was older. So that just kind of gave me that thought. It just made me think about that. So know that your words grow with wisdom. Your words have wisdom.
as parents, yeah, we try, kids don't always listen, but, and I wanted to kind of reiterate, this idea of, you're the center of your own universe. This isn't a selfish thing. It's not an arrogant thing. It's that same concept. They tell you when you're on a plane, if the plane's going down and the masks are falling down, you put your own mask on first, because if you run out of oxygen, you can't help anyone, but if you put your own mask on first, then you can go and you can help other people get their mask on too. And that's the whole concept, and everything is that we have to be good within ourselves in order to help anyone else. And I would even go a step further, is that if you're good within yourself, you don't even have to do something for someone else necessarily. Like, I can't make my husband change. I can't make my family change. I can't make anyone do anything, but by virtue of me doing, working on myself, then that influences my behavior. And like I said, it influences everyone around me. So, and it's the same thing. It's like when you're taking care of yourself, and that, I feel like this is a big message of our time. At least for those of us who are following personal development or spirituality or whatever, is that you have to get yourself centered and take care of your own self, and make sure that you are pampering your own self before you're giving all your life energy away to someone else, because all then you're doing is draining yourself. You've got to fill back up at some point, right? You've got to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with helping people by any means. That's not my thought at all whatsoever. But it's definitely, you've got to take care of yourself, or you're not going to be good for anyone. Okay, I guess I'll wrap it up for today. If nobody else has anything else to say. Awesome. Okay, guys, it's been fun. I enjoy our conversations, and we have a really good time on here. And for those of you who are watching, if this is interesting to you, click like right there, wherever you're watching it, whether it's on YouTube or you're watching the replay on the live Facebook stream. Click a like, share your thoughts, tell us what you think. And if you'd like to join us and participate in this discussion, we would love to have you. If you're already in our Facebook group, there's a link at the top of the group. There's in the announcements, it tells you, that's the first thing you see when you join in the group, is that announcement that tells you how to get into this mastermind. So that link remains the same. And if it ever changes, I'll change it on that post. So you can jump in anytime. We get together every week, well, almost every week on Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. And if you're watching us on YouTube, there'll be a link down below the video where you can get into our Facebook group and find us so that you can participate as well. We'd love to have you. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear what you're thinking about this, because, when we learn different perspectives, then we all can learn and expand as well. Lori, were you just unmuting? Did you want to jump out and say something, or was that just a twitch of the finger?
Well, I think about a lot of things, but I don't feel like I get my words together right all the way through. It was like, oh, I should say something, but it's difficult in this technology. I still have to focus on getting this all worked out so you can see my face and it can be able to participate better. But while we're here creating world peace and solving all the problems, we'll just keep on filling back up. See you next week.
All right, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week. And we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.